She woke up before dawn, as she had for years, to start her long day. The small apartment she called home was quiet, except for the soft hum of the old refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. The room was simple, with worn furniture that had seen better days, but it was clean and neat, because she had learned early that order gave her a small sense of control in a world that often felt unfair. She moved quietly, careful not to wake her young son, who still slept deeply in the corner of the room. Even at 7 years old, he understood their routine. He never complained about her early mornings or late nights, though she sometimes wished he would. By the time the sun started to rise, she was already on the bus, heading toward the wealthy part of the city where she worked. She had been a maid for over 15 years, and while the work was hard and often unappreciated, it was honest work that kept food on the table and a roof over their heads. She knew every crack in the floorboards, every stubborn stain on the marble countertops, and every favorite mug and towel in the large house she cleaned. To her employers, she was invisible at times, just another hand doing the chores that they never had to think about. But she carried herself with pride, knowing the dignity of a job done well. Her mornings started early and never ended before evening. She dusted, swept, polished, and scrubbed. Every task was a small battle against dirt and disorder. She carried heavy buckets of water and carried laundry up and down stairs, always mindful of the delicate items that could not be handled roughly. Her body ached constantly, but she refused to complain. Pain, she had learned, was a companion rather than a foe. It was something that reminded her she was alive, and that she was working for something bigger than herself. Outside the grand windows of the house she cleaned, the city moved on without her. People in suits walked past, heads held high, briefcases in hand, completely unaware of the lives that made their comfort possible. Children played in parks, their laughter carrying on the breeze, a reminder of her own child waiting at home. She often thought about how different the world looked through the eyes of those who had everything and those who had so little. The contrast was sharp, but she had learned to accept it. Resentment, she found, was a luxury she could not afford. Lunch was always a quick affair. She usually carried a simple sandwich wrapped in paper, eaten in a corner where no one could see her. Sometimes she would close her eyes and just listen to the quiet hum of the house, letting herself imagine a life that felt just out of reach. In those moments, she dreamed of small joys: a proper meal on the table without counting every penny, a day off where she could just sit in the sun, or a simple conversation with someone who truly understood her struggles. But dreams, she knew, were fleeting, and the real world always called her back. Despite the hard work, she found moments of small happiness in her routine. A flower that had grown stubbornly through the crack of the sidewalk on her way to work, a smile from the young child of the family she worked for, or a kind word from an elderly neighbor on her way home. These moments reminded her that life, even when difficult, could still offer small pieces of beauty. She clung to these fragments, storing them away like precious jewels in the hidden corners of her mind. Her employers were typical in many ways, polite enough when spoken to, but distant. They rarely noticed her beyond the work she did. She was used to being overlooked. The wealthy, she thought, often moved through life like it was a stage built for them alone, never seeing the people who held the backdrop together. Yet she did not hate them. She understood that wealth brought its own burdens, invisible and heavy in their own way. She simply accepted her place in the world, doing her work with diligence and pride. As the afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows, she continued her tasks, moving from room to room with practiced efficiency. She polished silver, folded linens, and made sure everything gleamed as if the house itself were alive. The house was beautiful, filled with expensive furniture, artwork, and decorations that spoke of wealth and taste. But it felt cold, lacking the warmth of family and laughter that she cherished at home. She often thought that wealth alone could never buy happiness, a truth she held close to her heart. Evening brought its own challenges. The cleaning tasks grew heavier, the dishes piled up, and the laundry seemed endless. Her hands were rough and calloused from years of scrubbing, but they were capable hands that had learned to care for others with both tenderness and strength. When the work was finally done, she felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. There was pride in seeing a space transformed by her efforts, even if no one else acknowledged it. After her shift, she walked home, carrying groceries and the small belongings she needed for her family. The streets were filled with lights and noise, a constant reminder that the world moved faster than she could ever hope to keep pace. But she moved steadily, step by step, driven by a love for her son that made every hardship worth enduring. At home, she would cook a simple dinner, helping her child with homework, listening to his stories, and tucking him into bed with a kiss and a whispered word of encouragement. Nights were quiet, and she often sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. She reflected on her day, on the small victories and the challenges she faced, and allowed herself to dream briefly of a life that might one day be different. She imagined opportunities she could never afford, experiences that seemed beyond reach, and a world where her hard work could be rewarded in ways that mattered more than money. These thoughts were fleeting, but they gave her hope, a fragile but persistent light that refused to go out. Sleep eventually claimed her, and she rested in the knowledge that tomorrow would be another day of work, of struggle, and of love. She was tired, often worn to the bone, but she carried on because she had to. Life demanded resilience, and she had learned to meet it with quiet strength. In her heart, she knew that no matter how hard the world could be, she would never stop caring, never stop dreaming, and never stop believing in the small joys that made her life meaningful. Her journey was difficult, but it was hers, and she faced it with courage and an unwavering sense of dignity. The week had started like any other, with the early bus rides and the weight of chores pressing down on her shoulders. But that morning, as she unfolded the small envelope she found waiting for her on the kitchen counter, something felt different. The envelope was plain, with neat handwriting that read her name. She opened it carefully, wondering what it could be. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala. It was an event she had only ever seen in magazines or on television, a world of glittering lights, expensive dresses, and people who seemed to live without struggle. Her heart skipped a beat. The thought of attending a place so far removed from her own life filled her with both excitement and fear. She sat at the small kitchen table, her hands clutching the invitation. Could she really go? She thought about the dress she might wear, the shoes that would have to be polished, and the long hours of travel and preparation. Every step seemed impossible at first. She knew she would stand out among the wealthy guests, someone who came from a completely different world. But then she reminded herself that she had faced impossible things before. Life had never been gentle, but she had survived, and she had survived with dignity. Perhaps this was another challenge she could meet. Her son wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. He noticed her hesitation and looked at her curiously. "What's that, Mom?" he asked. She smiled, careful not to show the mix of nerves and excitement that danced inside her. "It's an invitation," she said simply. "A chance to see a special event, something very different from what we are used to." He tilted his head, processing her words. "Will you go?" he asked. The honesty in his small voice reminded her of why she kept pushing forward, why she faced long days and endless work. "I think I will," she said softly. He smiled and hugged her, giving her a quiet encouragement that strengthened her resolve. The days that followed were filled with preparation. She cleaned her small apartment more thoroughly than usual, making sure everything sparkled. She borrowed a dress from a friend, a simple but elegant garment, and made small adjustments so it would fit better. She practiced walking in the shoes she had chosen, learning to balance comfort with grace. Every step was a rehearsal, every gesture a small victory. She rehearsed her polite smiles, the way she would hold herself, and how she would engage in conversation without feeling out of place. It was exhausting but also exhilarating. When the day of the gala finally arrived, she woke early, her stomach fluttering with nervous anticipation. She carefully arranged her hair, applied minimal makeup, and took a deep breath. The simple act of looking at herself in the mirror brought a wave of pride. She looked different, yes, but still herself. The strength that had carried her through years of hardship was visible in her eyes, and that gave her confidence. She was not pretending to be someone else. She was presenting the best version of herself to a world that had never really noticed her. The journey to the gala was a mix of excitement and anxiety. She rode the bus through streets she had walked many times, but today they seemed transformed, as if the city itself were anticipating the evening ahead. She thought about the people she would meet, the conversations she might have, and the unfamiliar social rules she would have to navigate. Her heart pounded, but she focused on each step, on each breath, reminding herself that she belonged in the world as much as anyone else. Arriving at the venue, she was struck by the grandeur of the place. The lights shimmered like stars, chandeliers hanging from the ceilings and casting a golden glow over the elegant crowd. Women in flowing gowns and men in sharp suits moved gracefully across the polished floors. The music filled the air, soft yet commanding, adding to the sense of magic that seemed to hang in every corner. She felt a mixture of awe and self-consciousness. She was aware of the differences between her life and theirs, yet she held her head high, knowing that she had earned the right to be there simply by being herself. As she stepped inside, she was greeted by warm smiles and polite nods. Some glanced at her, curious about the modest dress and the quiet confidence she carried. She moved carefully through the crowd, careful to observe and adapt but never losing herself. Every interaction was a lesson in subtlety, in understanding the world she had been invited into. She listened to conversations about charities, donations, and philanthropic efforts, topics that were foreign but fascinating. Her own life had been focused on survival and love, but tonight she was learning about influence and generosity, on a scale she had never imagined. Then she saw him. He was the son of the billionaire who had funded much of the event, moving through the crowd with a charm that drew attention without effort. When their eyes met, he offered a warm smile, a gesture that seemed genuine in a room filled with formalities. Something about his expression made her feel seen, not for what she lacked or what she did for a living, but for who she was as a person. He approached her and a polite conversation began, each word measured yet sincere. She found herself relaxing, realizing that human connection could exist even in spaces that seemed intimidating and far removed from her own world. During their conversation, a moment of unexpected familiarity occurred. He looked at her with a spark of affection and said a word that caught her completely off guard. He called her Mom. She blinked, surprised, unsure if she had heard correctly. The word lingered between them, carrying with it warmth, respect, and perhaps a longing she had not anticipated. She laughed softly, a little embarrassed but touched by the sentiment. It was a word that carried weight, a word that opened a door to something new and unexpected. She realized then that beyond wealth and status, people craved genuine connection, and sometimes it appeared in the most surprising forms. The rest of the evening unfolded with a mix of wonder and nervous excitement. She met other guests, listened to speeches, and observed the elegance of a world that had always seemed distant. Yet through it all, she carried herself with grace, guided by the quiet strength that had brought her this far. The gala was dazzling, yes, but it was the simple human moments, the smiles, the brief exchanges, the recognition of her presence, that left the most lasting impression. By the end of the evening, she left with a new perspective. She had seen a world that felt magical and far removed from her own. Yet she had also discovered that kindness and sincerity transcended social boundaries. She realized that despite the differences in wealth and status, people could connect on a human level. That evening was not just an event, it was a lesson, a reminder that her life, though filled with struggle, held value and meaning. Walking home under the soft glow of streetlights, she reflected on the invitation that had changed her day and, perhaps, her outlook on life. She thought about her son, the way his small encouragement had strengthened her resolve, and how she would share the story of this unusual, beautiful night with him. She felt a quiet pride in herself, in her courage to step into a world that seemed foreign, and in the grace with which she had navigated it. The charity gala had opened a door, not just to a new social world, but to the realization that life could offer unexpected opportunities. She did not yet know what would come from it, but she understood that her presence there was a beginning. It was a start of something subtle but significant, a reminder that despite hardship, despite struggle, her life was capable of moments of wonder, recognition, and connection. And as she finally entered her small apartment that night, exhausted but fulfilled, she felt a renewed sense of hope, ready to face the challenges of tomorrow with the quiet courage that had always guided her. The gala had been going for a while when she arrived, and the air inside was filled with a sense of excitement, elegance, and quiet power. Guests moved gracefully through the large hall, chatting and laughing, their voices blending with the soft music that floated through the air. The maid moved carefully among them, her heart beating with a mix of nervousness and wonder. She tried to absorb every detail, the glittering chandeliers, the polished floors, the rich fabrics of the gowns and suits around her. It was a world she had only imagined, and now she was living it, even if only for a few hours. She kept her eyes on the people around her, noticing the way they smiled, spoke, and held themselves. Some glanced at her, curiosity in their eyes, perhaps wondering why someone of her simple appearance had come to such an elegant event. She did not mind the attention. She had learned to carry herself with quiet confidence. The dress she wore, modest yet elegant, allowed her to blend in without losing her own identity. Every step she took was careful, measured, yet natural, as if she belonged in the world she had long thought too far beyond her reach. The evening progressed, and she found herself near the refreshments table, quietly observing the conversations around her. People spoke of donations, projects, and social responsibilities with a casual ease that seemed foreign. She listened politely, occasionally nodding, learning about a world that moved with a rhythm she had never known. Despite the unfamiliarity, she felt a sense of calm in simply being present. She was participating, witnessing, and learning, and that in itself was empowering. Then she noticed him. He was standing a few feet away, surrounded by other guests, but when he caught sight of her, his attention seemed to shift. There was something in his gaze, curiosity, recognition, warmth that drew her in. He excused himself from his company and approached her, a smile spreading across his face. Her heart fluttered. There was a grace in his movements, a natural charm that was not forced or rehearsed. He extended his hand politely, and she shook it with a gentle firmness, their eyes meeting in a moment of mutual acknowledgement. Conversation began, cautious at first, polite and measured. He asked her about her evening, complimenting her on her presence and how she carried herself. She felt a mixture of surprise and humility. It was not common for someone so wealthy and influential to show genuine interest in her life. Yet he listened, really listened, as she spoke of small joys, hard work, and the pride she found in caring for others. She realized that he did not see her as just another guest, nor did he judge her by her background. He saw her humanity, and that simple recognition brought a warmth she had rarely felt from people of such wealth. Then came the moment she would never forget. In the middle of a conversation about charity and responsibility, he said it, the word that caught her off guard and made her heart skip. He called her Mom. At first she was startled, unsure if she had heard correctly. The word hung between them, warm and unexpected. There was no mockery in his voice, only a gentle affection that seemed to bridge the gap between their worlds. She laughed softly, a little embarrassed yet touched by the sentiment. In that instant she realized that connection, real and sincere, could exist in places she had never imagined. He explained with a hint of a smile that the word came naturally, perhaps because of the warmth he sensed in her, the kindness that radiated without effort. She listened, touched by his honesty, feeling an unexpected closeness with someone she had just met. The word Mom carried with it recognition, respect, and an unspoken longing for genuine care. For a moment, the glittering world around them faded, leaving only the simple human bond that had formed in the midst of elegance and wealth. Their conversation deepened as the evening continued. He asked about her life, about her work, and about her family. She spoke humbly, sharing glimpses of her daily struggles, the sacrifices she made, and the pride she felt in raising her son. She did not embellish or complain. She simply spoke the truth of her life. He listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes offering thoughtful words that showed he understood more than she expected. It was a conversation that transcended social boundaries, a genuine human connection that neither wealth nor poverty could diminish. As they talked, she began to notice the subtle ways in which he defied expectations. He did not boast of his wealth, nor did he speak of power in a way that felt intimidating. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in people, in understanding their lives and struggles. She realized that beneath the veneer of wealth, there was a person capable of empathy and compassion. The encounter left her feeling seen and respected, a feeling she rarely experienced in the world she navigated daily. The night moved forward, with music playing softly in the background and conversations continuing around them. She met other guests briefly, each interaction a small step into a world that was still foreign yet slowly becoming familiar. Yet it was the moments with him that lingered in her mind, moments that spoke of kindness, recognition, and the simple human need to connect. She realized that despite the differences in their lives, there was a shared humanity that could not be ignored. As the gala began to wind down, she found herself reflecting on the evening. The glittering lights, the elegant dresses, and the soft music were enchanting, yes, but it was the personal connection she had experienced that mattered most. The warmth in his eyes, The unexpected use of the word mom and the genuine interest he had shown in her life left a lasting impression. She felt a quiet pride in herself, in the courage it had taken to attend, and in the grace with which she had navigated the unfamiliar social terrain. Walking through the grand hall one last time before leaving, she took in the sights and sounds with a sense of gratitude. She had stepped into a world that felt distant and intimidating, yet she had not lost herself. She had engaged, observed, and formed a connection that was real and meaningful. It was a reminder that life, even in its most unexpected moments, could offer experiences that enriched the soul, that challenged perceptions, and that created bonds beyond the boundaries of wealth and status. As she exited the building, the cool night air filled her lungs, bringing with it a sense of calm and reflection. She thought about her son waiting at home, about the small joys that sustained her through long days, and about the unexpected recognition she had received. The evening had been a lesson in courage, humanity, and the power of simple kindness. She realized that despite the differences in their worlds, people could meet in the middle through honesty, respect, and genuine care. The journey home was quiet, her mind replaying the events of the evening. She smiled softly, thinking about the word that had changed everything for a moment. The way he had seen her not as a maid or a guest, but as a person deserving of recognition and warmth. It was a memory she would carry with her, a reminder that even in a world defined by wealth and privilege, there were moments of true human connection that transcended social boundaries. By the time she reached her apartment, her body was tired but her heart was full. She prepared a simple snack, reflecting on the night's experiences. She thought about the strength it had taken to step into a world so different from her own, and the courage it had required to engage with people who lived in it naturally. She understood that life could offer unexpected opportunities, and that by remaining true to herself, she could navigate those moments with grace and dignity. As she settled into bed, she allowed herself a rare moment of quiet satisfaction. The gala had been more than an event. It had been an experience that expanded her understanding of the world and of human nature. She felt a renewed sense of hope and possibility, knowing that despite the challenges she faced daily, life could hold moments of recognition, warmth, and genuine connection. And with that thought, she drifted into a deep and peaceful sleep, ready to face whatever the next day might bring, strengthened by the unexpected encounter that had made her feel seen, valued, and human in a way she had rarely experienced before. The evening had grown darker when she arrived at the gala, the city lights reflecting on the polished glass walls of the venue. The doors opened to reveal a hall filled with sparkling chandeliers, tall floral arrangements, and guests dressed in elegant gowns and sharp suits. She paused for a moment at the entrance, feeling a mix of awe and anxiety. Every step she took into the hall made her heart beat faster, but she reminded herself that she belonged there, at least for tonight, because she had been invited. That simple fact gave her courage. As she walked further in, she observed the crowd carefully. Groups of people were engaged in animated conversations, their laughter echoing across the high ceilings. Servers moved gracefully among them, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Every corner of the room seemed alive with energy and sophistication. She adjusted her dress slightly and straightened her posture, knowing that she might stand out but determined to remain composed. She had spent weeks preparing for this night, rehearsing how to carry herself and how to speak with ease, and she would not let fear take that away from her. She moved toward the refreshments table, and as she waited, she took in the music, a soft string quartet that added elegance to the atmosphere. She noticed the details she would never see in her daily life, the smoothness of the marble floors, the intricate patterns of the tapestries, and the subtle glow of candlelight reflecting off crystal glasses. Each sight reminded her of how different this world was from the one she lived in daily, yet she felt a strange sense of belonging. She had worked hard her whole life, and tonight she was here, fully present and part of something grand. It was then that she noticed him. He was moving through the crowd with ease, nodding politely to people he passed, but his eyes found her, and something about his gaze stopped her. He was the son of the billionaire hosting the gala, tall, confident, but with a warmth that seemed unusual in this kind of setting. He approached her with a smile that felt genuine, not rehearsed or forced. Her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly reminded herself to stay composed. She extended her hand, and he shook it firmly, their eyes meeting in a moment of unspoken understanding. The conversation began cautiously. He asked her how she was enjoying the evening, complimenting her dress and her poise. She responded politely, speaking clearly and confidently, and soon the tension between them began to fade. She realized that he was genuinely interested in what she had to say, not simply making small talk as people often did in such social settings. He listened to her stories of hard work and perseverance, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly seen, not for what she did or what she owned, but for who she was. Then, in a moment that surprised her, he said it. "Mom," he said softly, a spark of warmth in his eyes. She blinked, caught off guard, unsure if she had heard correctly. The word hung between them, unexpected and tender. She laughed softly, a little embarrassed, and shook her head. "I think you have me confused with someone else," she said, trying to mask the wave of emotion rising in her chest. But he smiled, explaining that he had always been drawn to her kindness, her calm presence, and the way she seemed to care deeply about others. To him, the word mom felt right in that moment, a symbol of nurturing and warmth he hadn't found in his own life. She felt a lump in her throat, touched by his honesty and the gentle sincerity behind the word. The rest of the conversation flowed naturally. He asked about her life, her family, and her work. She spoke humbly, sharing her daily routines, the struggles she faced, and the joy she found in raising her son. She did not embellish or exaggerate. She simply told her truth. He listened attentively, his expression reflecting genuine interest and understanding. The gap between their social worlds seemed to narrow with every word. She realized that despite their differences, there was a shared humanity in the room, something that wealth and status could not overshadow. Around them, the gala continued in all its splendor. Waiters passed by with trays of delicate appetizers, and the soft music created a calm rhythm amidst the lively chatter. Guests mingled, laughing and networking, but she remained focused on the conversation that had touched her heart. She noticed that he treated others with the same respect and kindness he had shown her, moving through the crowd with humility and attentiveness. It was clear that he valued human connection over appearances, a trait she deeply admired. As the evening progressed, she felt herself becoming more comfortable in the space. She engaged with other guests briefly, sharing polite smiles and nods, but it was her interaction with him that stayed with her. Each exchange, each laugh, each thoughtful question reinforced the idea that kindness and authenticity could cross social boundaries. She realized that her presence at the gala was not just about seeing wealth and elegance. It was about experiencing genuine human connection in a world that often seemed superficial. They spoke about life, about challenges, and about the importance of caring for others. He shared stories of his own upbringing, the pressures of family expectations, and his desire to make a positive impact in the world. She listened with empathy, offering her perspective grounded in lived experience, resilience, and compassion. Their conversation became a bridge between two very different worlds, showing that understanding and respect could transcend social and economic divides. By the time the gala began to wind down, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had not anticipated. She had stepped into a world that felt intimidating and foreign, yet she had navigated it with grace. She had connected with someone who truly listened, who acknowledged her value, and who saw her for the person she was. The evening had been more than an event. It had been a revelation, a reminder that human warmth and connection were more powerful than wealth or status. As she prepared to leave, she reflected on the moments that had mattered most. The glittering chandeliers and polished floors were beautiful, but it was the conversations, the shared laughter, and the unexpected use of the word mom that would stay with her. She understood that life could offer moments of recognition and care in the most unlikely places, and she felt grateful for the courage that had brought her to this night. Walking through the doors of the gala and stepping into the cool night air, she felt a sense of calm and reflection. The city lights twinkled around her, and she thought about her son waiting at home, about the life they had built together, and about the possibility of new experiences that could enrich their lives. She realized that despite the struggles and hardships, there were moments of joy and connection that could lift the spirit and inspire hope. The ride home was quiet, giving her time to replay the events of the evening. She smiled softly, thinking about the genuine interest and warmth she had encountered, and how it had made her feel valued. The word mom had meant more than she could explain. a simple gesture that carried profound significance. She understood that life was not just about survival. It was also about these fleeting yet meaningful connections that reminded one of the beauty of human nature. By the time she reached her small apartment, her body was tired, but her heart was full. She prepared a simple snack and thought about sharing the story with her son, imagining his reaction to the idea that she had been recognized in such a unique way. She felt pride in herself, in the courage to step into an unfamiliar world and in the grace with which she had carried herself. Tonight had been a lesson in resilience, dignity, and the power of kindness. As she finally lay down to rest, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection and satisfaction. The gala had been a glimpse into a world of elegance, yes, but it had also revealed the universal truth that people longed for connection, understanding, and empathy. She felt a renewed sense of hope, ready to face the challenges of tomorrow with the quiet strength that had always guided her. The encounter had changed something within her, a reminder that no matter the struggles one faces, there were moments in life that could bring recognition, warmth, and the affirmation of being seen for who you truly were. The days after the gala were filled with a quiet excitement she had never expected. The memory of that night lingered in her mind, a mix of glittering lights, soft music, and most of all, the warmth of the conversation she had shared with him. She found herself thinking about it constantly, replaying his words, his smile, and the surprising use of the word mom. Life had been so routine for so long, and yet this unexpected connection had created a ripple in her world, subtle but undeniable. She returned to her regular routines with a renewed sense of purpose. Cleaning the large house, organizing laundry, scrubbing floors, and preparing meals, all the tasks she had done countless times, now felt different. There was a quiet pride in her work, a reminder that even small actions carried meaning and value. She realized that she had always given her best, and perhaps that was what had been noticed, what had inspired a moment of recognition in someone from a very different life. Her labor, her care, her patience, all the qualities she had taken for granted in herself, had significance beyond what she had imagined. One afternoon, as she prepared dinner, she found herself reflecting on the conversation she had had with him. He had asked about her struggles, her dreams, and the little joys she found in life. She remembered the way he listened, the genuine curiosity in his eyes, and how he seemed to value honesty above all else. That evening had been a rare moment where her life, often invisible to the world, had been acknowledged with respect and warmth. She realized that recognition did not need to be grand or material. It could be as simple as being seen, heard, and valued for who she truly was. Her thoughts often drifted to her son. She imagined telling him about the gala, about the elegance and the grandeur, and about the way someone had called her mom in a heartfelt, sincere way. She knew he would be fascinated, but more importantly, she hoped he would understand the lesson behind it. Life might be full of hardships, but there were moments of connection that could uplift the spirit and remind people of the goodness that existed in the world. She wanted him to know that no matter how challenging life could be, kindness, sincerity, and dignity mattered more than anything. As the week went on, she received a message from him, a simple note expressing his pleasure at having met her and his desire to stay in touch. She was touched, and a mix of excitement and nervousness filled her. She responded with gratitude, careful not to overstep, but also eager to continue the connection. The exchange was gentle, respectful, and human, without the need for grand gestures or extravagant promises. It reminded her that relationships could form naturally, built on mutual respect and understanding, rather than expectations or status. When they met again, it was in a quieter setting away from the grandeur of a gala. He invited her to a small charity project he was supporting, a chance to see the impact of his work firsthand. She observed as he interacted with volunteers, listened to their stories, and offered support where it was needed. His approach was patient and empathetic, treating every individual with dignity. She found herself inspired by his actions, noting that true leadership was not about commands or authority, but about care, attention, and genuine involvement. During this visit, they had another long conversation, more personal and reflective than the first. He asked about her childhood, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned from a life full of struggles. She spoke honestly, sharing the moments of hardship and the moments of joy that had shaped her. He listened without interruption, absorbing her words and occasionally responding with thoughtful insights. It was a dialogue that bridged two worlds, showing that despite differences in wealth and opportunity, human experiences could resonate deeply and meaningfully. She also shared her hopes and dreams, not for luxury or wealth, but for her son, and for the life she wished to create for him. She wanted him to grow up with values of compassion, perseverance, and integrity, and she wanted to provide him with opportunities she never had. Her words carried sincerity, and he acknowledged them with respect, understanding the depth of her intentions. It was a moment of mutual recognition, a reaffirmation that life's true richness was measured in care, guidance, and the bonds people formed. Over time, their connection grew, not in a dramatic or flashy way, but in subtle, meaningful moments. He would occasionally check in, share updates about his projects, or ask for her perspective on certain initiatives. She in turn offered her honest thoughts, grounded in experience and practicality. It was a relationship built on respect, understanding, and an appreciation for the strengths each of them brought to it. She felt valued, not for her social position or appearance, but for her character and wisdom. This was a new experience, and she embraced it with humility and gratitude. Through these interactions, she noticed changes in herself as well. She carried herself with more confidence, speaking her mind when needed and trusting her judgment. Her work, while still physically demanding, was infused with a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. She began to see opportunities where before there had been none, small possibilities for growth, for influence, and for connection. The world had not changed, but her perception of it had, and with that perception came empowerment. One day, he invited her to meet a few other people involved in charitable work. It was an introduction to a network she had never imagined herself being part of. She met individuals who had dedicated their lives to causes she cared about, people who treated her with the same respect and warmth she had experienced before. She observed their work, listened to their stories, and shared her own insights, realizing that her experiences gave her a perspective that was valued in these discussions. She felt a sense of belonging, something she had rarely experienced outside of her home and work. As their friendship developed, she began to reflect on the lessons she had learned from this unexpected relationship. Life was unpredictable, full of challenges and struggles, but it also offered moments of profound connection and understanding. She realized that dignity, kindness, and authenticity could bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable. The word mom that had first surprised her was more than just a title. It was a recognition of the nurturing strength and humanity she carried within her. It was a reminder that influence was not measured in wealth or status, but in the ability to touch lives positively. Her son noticed changes in her as well. She seemed lighter, more confident, and more hopeful about the future. She shared lessons from her experiences, emphasizing the importance of empathy, resilience, and kindness. He listened with wide eyes, absorbing her words, and learning that life's true wealth lay in character and human connection, rather than material possessions. She hoped that through her example, he would grow into a person who valued these qualities and carried them into his own life. As weeks turned into months, she continued to navigate her life with renewed purpose. Her work remained demanding, but she approached it with a sense of pride and accomplishment.